Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today. Thank you for joining us wherever you're dialing in from all over the world. I hope you're staying safe and your families are all healthy and keeping well. I just want to quickly check that everyone can hear me while we wait for a couple more people to join. If you could just send a yes if you can hear me. Wonderful, thank you very much. Excellent, thanks everyone. Cool, so we'll get started. My name is Samantha White. I'm the Marketing Manager of the Oxford MBA program here at Said Business School. And today we're joined by Liz Starbuck Greer, the MBA Program Director.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Hopefully you can all hear Liz. If everyone wouldn't mind just popping another couple of quick yeses in there to let us know that you can hear. Wonderful, thank you. Sounds like we're all good. So thank you for joining us today. Especially congratulations to everyone who got their offer last week. I hope that was a really exciting email to receive in your inbox. Today, Liz is going to be talking about her perspective on what makes the Oxford MBA unique, what to expect from now up until September, and any new initiatives that are launching at the school this year. So I'll hand over to Liz now, and we can get going.
Great, thanks so much, Sam, and welcome everybody to our webinar this afternoon. I'm delighted to be able to speak to you today. First of all, I'd like to just acknowledge that we are living in uncertain times at the moment, and we have had to, of course, accommodate our working around what's going on in the wider domain and particularly the public health situation here in the UK. So unusually, Sam and I are in completely different locations in the same way that you are. So we are not able to sit next to each other, and Sam can't nudge me when I'm about to say something silly. So just to acknowledge that we may have some bumps in the road as we go through with handling your questions, etc., just because we're not in the same room, but we'll work it all out together. So, in terms of what we want to do today, we have a few things to go through. So I want to talk a little bit to you about what we're trying to achieve here at the Oxford with the Oxford MBA. And of course, you're all in slightly different stages of your journey, although you're all offer holders. Some of you will have been in that position for a little bit longer than others. Some of you, as Sam said, will have just received that good news. But I'd like to just refresh our memories about why we're here and why we believe the Oxford MBA is so special. Then we're going to talk through the structure of the program. And that's the main purpose of our webinar today, is to give you a bit more insight into actually what it's going to feel like to be here doing your MBA next year. And we'll finish with some information on your next steps. So before we go through that, I would like to just really think a bit more about the current situation that we're living in terms of the coronavirus and COVID-19, and just to acknowledge that wherever you are in the world, you will be touched by this in some way. And I'm sure many of you are dealing with quite significant personal and family challenges as you try and navigate this new landscape. And, I really wanted to just extend our warmest wishes to you and thank you for spending the time with us today, when no doubt there are many more other things that are demanding of your attention at this time. And of course, here in Oxford, we're going through some huge transition in dealing with this situation. And if you've been in touch with our current students, you may well be aware that we have moved for the foreseeable future to online teaching. So Trinity, that's our third term of the year, which we'll talk about when we go through the structure of the program, for our current cohort is being delivered digitally. So that's a very different position than the one we expected to find ourselves in when we started the cohort in September. Certainly wasn't the type of program that I expected to be leading and to be, having to deal with a number of challenges alongside 320 plus students who are on the program this year. But I will just say that we are, really coming together as a community, and I've been incredibly proud of the leadership that particularly the Student Council has showed this year in helping support one another through this challenging time. And we're still very hopeful that we'll be able to come back together in person and finish off the Oxford MBA for the class of 2020 in the way in which we started it. So given the unique perspective, let's think about that as we roll through our agenda today. What are we trying to achieve with the Oxford MBA? Well, you'll have done your research, you'll have spoken with many different schools, and you'll have looked at all of our materials. So I'm sure it won't come as any surprise to you that we have a distinct focus on responsible business, and particularly on leading with purpose. So it's our genuine belief that in order to deal with the world scale challenges that are facing us, and this current situation really hones in on this really well. We have to bring together a very diverse group of people with different perspectives, different backgrounds, who can look at these challenges from different angles and find a business solution to them. So we deliberately curate a very diverse class. And although you won't have got to know many of the colleagues on this webinar well yet, you will over time, and you'll begin to understand just how distinct you are from one another and how different your perspectives are. And that's really critical to what we're trying to achieve here at the Oxford MBA. The world is faced with a number of huge problems, and if we're going to work through to solutions to those, we need to bring those different perspectives together, because we've already tried being siloed into sectors and it hasn't worked. So that's a really important part of who we are, and it's really within our DNA as a business school. The other aspect of the Oxford MBA, which is really special to me, is the type of leader that we are trying to develop. And so it's not just about purpose, that is the heart of it. But in order to lead with purpose, you have to have a number of skills that wrap around that. And so I really think very closely about how I am helping my leaders to develop resilience, to develop skills in collaboration, to develop their creativity, in order to kind of go forward as 21st century leaders. So that's a really special aspect of the program for me as well as a program director. And it's one of the reasons why I was keen to lead this program and not another MBA, because I do think it's quite special to what we do here at Oxford. The final aspect that I think is very relevant is our embeddedness within the wider university. So as a collegiate university, we have lots of opportunity for you to engage with people beyond the MBA cohort and really richen and deepen your experience and your understanding of the different aspects of business and society and how they come together. And you can do that through your college, which no doubt you've read about. You can also do it through a number of different university initiatives, such as the Foundry, which is deliberately university-wide, focusing on developing entrepreneurship across the university community. So lots of different ways in which that comes to life. So let's look at the structure of the program. What is it actually going to feel like for you when you come to join us? So the dates you'll see running along the top of the slides here are this year's dates. So don't worry if it appears to be a few days out of whack. This is just a sample to show you what your year will look like. This is the first term you spend with us. We call it Michaelmas because we like to be different here at Oxford. So it's not autumn or fall, it's Michaelmas term, and that runs from September to December. So there's lots of activities for you to engage in pre-arrival. So between sort of around about July through to mid-September, you'll be receiving lots of communications from the program team and particularly from the career development team, who will be asking you to get prepared to start your career journey. So it is a one-year MBA. You know that. That's probably one of the reasons why you selected it. And so there's a very short period of time in which to really ramp up your career development so that you can get access to those careers that you're looking for. So really important that you spend some time over the summer doing that work that the careers team will be passing your way and getting yourself ready in general for the experience. And for those of you that are traveling in from all around the world, the opportunity to potentially, if you can, spend a few days or weeks in Oxford before you start the program will be really helpful to you, so you can get some of those logistics sorted out before we really kick off in the week that you can see there referred to as launch. So we have a 2-week launch period at the start of the term, which involves lots of different activities, but really the thread running through it is leadership. So how we are preparing you to lead yourself through your MBA experience, how we are preparing you to lead others in that experience as a member of a team, perhaps as an elected representative of the cohort, and then more generally, how we're preparing you to become a leader or to develop your leadership skills even further for your career as you leave the MBA. So a couple of weeks where you can spend some time together, really get to know one another, and there's lots of social stuff built into those 2 weeks, as you'd expect, to kind of launch that bonding between the cohort, and then we move into our core courses. So the majority of Michaelmas term is taken up with your core courses, and this is where you get the foundation, the knowledge that all MBAs really are built upon. And for us, it starts with organizational behavior, tech and ops, and accounting. So you'll have those 3 classes for the first block of term, and you can see that we work in 4-week blocks. You typically have 4 weeks of teaching followed by a week of assessment. And there are some variation throughout the year, but that's pretty much the standard. So at any given time, you've normally got 3 courses to concentrate on. And actually in that first block of Michaelmas term, those courses are somewhat integrated. So your assessment for those 3 courses will be integrated. If you think about those different topics, organizational behavior, tech and ops, accounting, you can see that actually it's completely obvious really that the assessment to those would be integrated, because most business challenges involve you looking at the challenge through those different lenses. So if in order to solve a business problem, you have to know the accounting aspects, you have to understand the organizational behavior aspects, and there's almost definitely an operational aspect to it. So although the teaching is distinct, there are ways in which that comes together through the term, and most particularly in the assessment that you then do. We then have a week which is partly continued assessment, but is also what we call an integrative module. So at this point, you get to do global rules of the game. This is an opportunity for us to teach and learn together in a different format. It's intensive. It's 2 or 3 days in that week where you complete the entire module. And Global Rules of the Game is a fascinating look at how different players interact when they're dealing with large-scale problems. So it starts to broaden your lens a little bit from specifically the organizational lens that you've looked at in the previous block. And then we finish the term with analytics, business finance, and marketing. So those being another set of core courses which will continue to augment your learning and give a different perspective on the business challenges that you're going to come up against. Michaelmas term will go quickly. It will feel very intense. You'll be starting to figure out, where your friendship groups are, where you can get support. You'll be starting to understand even more your own strengths and weaknesses, where you can lend support to other classmates, where you're going to draw on that support from those around you. So it's a really intensive term. It will feel quite heavy, but it will also feel really exciting because you'll also be starting your co-curricular activities. You'll be getting involved in the student union. You'll be getting involved in your college. So it's a really exciting time where all the sort of windows of opportunity that you have at Oxford begin to open up to you. Then you get to have a little break over Christmas, maybe go home if that's what you want to do, and come back to Hilary term, which is January to March. We start there, as you can see, mid-January, and this is where we begin your go-to journey. So the Global Opportunities and Threats Oxford, I'm sure many of you will have read, as it genuinely is, one of the flagship elements of our program. At this point, you'll be put together in a new team, so you'll be asked to choose an aspect of whatever the significant topic is that we're going to be looking at next year. And before anyone asks that question in the question function, we have not yet announced the topic for next year. We're still very heavily into this go-to process here for the current cohort, but we will be launching that topic area soon. That topic area will be something significant. So you may know that this year we're dealing with climate change. Previously, we have looked at the future of healthcare. So these are really big topics. You get to select an aspect of that topic that you would like to focus on, and then you're put into study teams or project teams where you will work through to a business solution of some kind for that aspect of the challenge. Now, go-to is really hard. It's a really difficult part of the program because it has a huge amount of ambiguity. So the scale of the challenge that we're talking about here doesn't lend itself to neat answers, and that's the point of it. It goes far beyond a business case, that you might typically be asked to solve in an MBA class. And so the challenge here is that sounds really exciting in the abstract. Actually, it's really hard in reality. And it's hard to develop your team, to move them forward, to get everybody working on one topic together. So this is a really challenging term for our students. Alongside go-to in that first block, you're dealing with your final core courses. So you have firms and markets and then strategy, which sort of start to round off the core aspects of the program. As we move into the second half of Hilary term, you start your entrepreneurial project. And so that's the final core element. So go-to continues to run alongside that. And you start your entrepreneurial project. At this point, you have free choice to choose your team members. So if we think about our team journeys, right from the start in launch, we'll put you in a study team. And that will be a team that you work through in Michaelmas term, particularly in those first 3 subjects that I mentioned have an integrated aspect. So you'll have a team there. When you get to go-to, you'll choose the aspect of the topic you're interested in and then we'll select a team for you. So there's a certain amount of choice there because you've chosen a topic, and that means people in your team are typically like-minded in the sense that they're interested in that topic. And then when we get to EP, it's completely free choice as to your teammates. So you can see that we're developing your team skills in slightly different ways as we move through the program. And I would encourage you to reflect as you go through the MBA on what you learn about teams during that process. What's the difference between a team that you've self-selected and one that was put together by somebody else? And how do you manage that different dynamic as a leader? Because you will find both those situations in the business world. So in the second half of that Hillary term, we also currently have 2 electives that you can choose from, quite a small set at this time, and the elective choice opens out a little bit more as we go through the program. There is a potential change to the program, which I can't announce at this stage, but it may be that slightly changes, in which case, of course, we will let you all know. But if it does change, it will be a good one, I promise you. Then we move into Trinity term. So this is what would in other places perhaps be called a summer term, and that runs from April to June. So you will have had a break over Easter or spring break time. You come back and you have the opportunity to do an international elective in the first week, or actually in week 0 of Trinity term. At the moment, we offer 2 options. So we offer a South African international elective focused on the particular way in which you do business in Africa and some of the differences around that. And then we offer one in New York, which is focused on media and marketing in the New York context. We also have a London elective that runs during that time on fintech. Now, of course, you will have heard, I'm sure, if you haven't heard, you will have figured out that this year those international electives did not run. Just with the public health situation globally and travel restrictions, we were not able to run those. And it was a really disappointing time for us all. And obviously, particularly for the students that had selected those, because it's such a highlight of the program. So we're really excited that we'll get the chance next year to get back to that international portfolio, because it's so much fun and such a valuable learning experience. We then move into the phase of the program where you are primarily in your electives. So this is the point where the portfolio opens to you and you have the opportunity to choose from among a wide range of electives, which will enable you to specialize in particular areas or to delve into subjects in a more advanced or deeper way. Of course, there are scheduling limitations on that, and there are choices to be made, but we do have a really interesting portfolio that opens up to you in Trinity term. Now, those do change each year. So obviously, I'm sure you will have looked on the website or talked to students and understood a bit about the electives we've offered in recent years. Just be aware that sometimes those vary year on year, depending on the availability of our faculty and of course the student demand for those particular electives. But lots of really exciting things that you can do during this time frame. Business history is one of my favorites that runs in Trinity. So that uses the particularly unique Oxford context to look at history, and Oxford is an amazing place to be considering the sort of historical context of business, because there are so many amazing resources and artifacts available to us. And Chris McKenna, who teaches that elective, is completely engaged with everything that's going on in the broader university. So it's a really unique opportunity. Electives that remain perennially popular: mergers and acquisitions, big data, negotiations. These are all electives that are available year on year because they are so popular amongst our students. So do watch out. As soon as you join the program in the fall, we'll be starting to talk about electives. We won't have a full list for you until a little bit later on, but obviously keep in touch with us through the program so that you can understand what's available to you. This is the point as well where you start to have the opportunity to undertake an internship. So we have 2 streams for internships, and that's really because we've understood the employment landscape, and there are several employers who can only offer internships at set periods during the year. And so we've opened up 2 streams to enable you to access those opportunities. Now, we have a careers team. I know many of you will have been on webinars and heard about their services, or you'll be about to do that in the future. So you'll be aware, I'm sure, that we have a really engaged and enthusiastic careers team. They will help support you in accessing internships. They advertise internships, and they can work with you on your interviewing technique to help you with the best chance possible. But you do need to source those internships yourself. So Just want to be clear about that, because depending on where you've been educated around the world, internship has a slightly different meaning in some places, and in some geographies you're placed in an internship. That's not what happens here. You have to compete for those internships through the companies who are offering them, and there'll be other students who are also seeking them. But we do everything we can to support you in securing those internships, and it continues to be a very popular option for our students. And then we finish with the summer term. So it's really important to note that this is a 12-month master's program. It is 1 year. When we say 1 year, we mean it genuinely in the calendar sense, not in the academic year sense. So please do be ready and prepared to stay with us from September through to September. So you will finish your program in that summer term, and this is where you can continue with electives, which tends to be the more popular choice. We have repeat streams of elective in the summer, and we also have new topics that will only be delivered in the summer. So lots of opportunity there for you to take those electives, and they're delivered in a slightly different format in the summer. So through the rest of the term, as you've seen, we talk about 4-week blocks of teaching. And typically in those 4-week blocks, you would have a course twice a week for 3 hours at a time. So you'd be talking about six hours a week over the 4-week period. When we get into the summer term, we actually run them in 2-week blocks. So it's slightly more intensive, a little bit more focused, but of course it means that you can take breaks at different times, because you're not necessarily going to have electives in all of those 3 blocks of 2 weeks each. And your assessment happens at the end of each block as well. So it's much more sort of just in time assessment at that point. Alongside electives as an option, there is the option to pursue a strategic consulting project. And this is where you would work with a business who have identified a business challenge, and you would work with it as part of a team with other MBA students to help them solve that challenge. So different to the internship, with the internship, that is a solo effort. That's you getting an internship, working directly for a company. For the SCP, it's a team-based project, and the company comes to us, or we source the strategic consulting project, and then you work on that project for the company. But you're not sort of employed by them. You don't have a contract with them. You're actually working as a team, typically based out of the business school, but often with a lot of contact with the company that you're working with, and that can flow through the summer. And then we finish in early September with our capstone. And this is really the opportunity for you to come together as a cohort. Of course, you'll have been doing different things in the summer. Some of you will have been on internships. They may be overseas. Some of you will have been on different electives. You probably won't have seen as much of each other as you did when you were all together in your core courses. And so this is the chance to really come together as a cohort and to finish with some reflection on what this journey has been for you, what it's meant for you, and any final kind of preparation that you need as you go out into the job market. And I should emphasize at this stage that your support from the career service doesn't end with capstone week. It continues for a period of time with them, and of course they can go into more detail on that with you, and I'm sure they will if they haven't already. So that is the flow of our year. Before we turn to questions, I'm just going to quickly talk about your next steps. So there's not long to go before you start with us. However, given the situation that we're in at the moment, of course, time has taken on a completely different meaning. And so every day brings a new challenge. We are absolutely intending to deliver the program as we always do, starting from September. And of course, if there were to be any change to that due to unforeseen circumstances, if the public health situation doesn't resolve as we expect it to, then we'll be in touch with everybody to talk about their options. But for now, we remain very much committed to delivering the program in person from September. From that launch week, I have already been working with our guest speakers for launch and our contributors to make that a really vibrant experience for us all. In the meantime, keep an eye out for those emails that will start to come to you from the program administration team and also from the career service, and put some time aside to get some of those pre-activities done so you can arrive really sort of fully prepped and ready to start your experience. Also, do take the time to check out our student blogs. There's lots of different information there from the perspective of individual students, and you can email our team at any time with questions that you might have, and you can see that email address there. We will either answer them directly, or we will make sure that the person who knows the answer gets back to you. So please do channel all your inquiries to Oxford MBA at You can, of course, get to know your new classmates via Telegram. That is an entirely student-led and run service or sort of channel of communication, so we're not involved in that at all. And you'll find lots of information on there. Not all of it will always be completely accurate, so if there's something you really need an answer to, do make sure you get the accurate information directly from the team. But absolutely use that as an opportunity to get to know your new classmates and indeed the current students, as I'm sure many of you are already. So that's everything from me. Sam, did I leave anything out that we need to be aware of?
No, that was all excellent, thank you. And we've already got some questions coming through. So if anyone else does have any questions, send them through now and we'll start to answer some of the ones that we've already got. We have a couple of questions about electives. So can we take electives from other departments? And also, is there a full list of the electives that were offered last year?
No, you can't take electives from other departments. The reason being that our schedule, our timetable is very different to elsewhere in Oxford. So because of the amount of content that we fit into 1 year, compared to a regular master's degree from Oxford, there's a significantly increased content and workload to make sure that you have all of the sort of skills that you need by the end of the year. And so that means that the way that we schedule just doesn't work to account for taking courses outside of the MBA, and that is not part of the regulations of the MBA. So you do have to do all your courses from the MBA list. What I will say is that given the nature of our school and how embedded we are in the institution, you'll find that some of the professors who teach electives for us actually do come from other departments, and we do embed content that traditionally might sit elsewhere within our business curriculum because we're very committed to this broader look at business. So I think you'd be kind of surprised of the number of, certainly of guest lecturers and also people who teach whole modules for us that come from elsewhere in the university. So there's lots of opportunity there to engage in a broader subject area. We don't publish the full list of electives, and partly that's because they do change each year. So it's very tough to put that list out there and then have people disappointed in perhaps changes that are made. So there is a sort of heart of the electives that run every year because they are so popular, and we will always have negotiations, we will always have mergers and acquisitions, we'll probably always have big data. So there's a sort of heart of electives that are repeated, but every year there is innovation and we have new and different things coming on stream. So really I think you need to come into the program confident that there will be an interesting set of electives, but I can't share with you what those will be at this stage.
Awesome, thank you. There's also been a couple of questions about the SCPs. Someone has asked if these sometimes also lead to job opportunities in the same firm later on, and another has asked if you can source your own SCP, or are these, I guess, provided or prescribed by SBS?
Yes, so yes and yes. Absolutely, there is always a possibility that employment will be generated through the work that you do on an SCP, and indeed, some of our corporate partners come to us with that in mind. They want a team to show them what they can do on a project, and it may be that generates the opportunity for them to hire one or more individuals from that team into longer term opportunities that they have. So that's absolutely possible, and it has happened. And yes, similarly, you can also suggest your own SCP. Now, there are criteria that project has to meet. So it would be a conversation between you and the faculty lead for that course to look at the project that you have in mind, the partner that you have in mind, and talk about whether it meets our academic criteria. And particularly, we're looking at sort of what's the level of the project and what's the scope. Is it big enough to justify the credits that would be attached to it? But that's absolutely possible. And the other thing to bear in mind is that an SCP must by definition be a team project. So if you have something you want to work on individually, that would need to be an internship. So that's an option as well, but that's a slightly different route that you would go down if you had a personal connection that you wanted to leverage.
Awesome, thank you. And there's a really good question about assessments, asking if there's a common assessment method or if it's a combination of examinations and coursework and projects.
Yeah, it's a combination. It's a really interesting question because Oxford as a university is still very strong on examinations. In-person examinations continue to be a very big part of how Oxford assesses. the knowledge of its students. So that absolutely does feature in the program. You should be prepared to do examinations. You will do examinations. They're in person. You wear sub-fusk, which is a kind of old-fashioned uniform that you have to wear for examinations, and you go to the examination hall to complete your examinations, and you write, physically write, not type, your examination. So, you know, it sounds kind of quirky and fun. It's actually taken very seriously at Oxford. Examinations are critical to what we do. That said, we do have a lot of other types of assessment within the MBA. So you will also be doing a number of individual assignments. You'll be doing group projects. You'll be submitting PowerPoint slides. You'll be doing presentations to faculty and to external partners. So we also have a form of class participation assessment in some classes. So you will be expected to show up and participate in a valuable way as part of your assessment. So there's a whole range of methods that are used. I do think it's important to let people know that examinations are still very critical to what we do, because for many of us, it will be a long time since we've done a formal examination. So just being prepared for that and having thought about how you're going to handle a timed examination is worth doing before you start the MBA.
And we've had quite a few questions about internships, so I guess try and summarize these all together. So someone has asked if they can be international and paid. Someone else has asked what the percentage of students taking internships is, and someone else has just asked if we could elaborate on the streams.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of the streams, there's just let me see if I can go back to the slide so I can show you the timing. So the streams are really about timing. So the first stream happens in June, and this is something that we just trialed this year because we found there were a couple of big companies who had internships that were very set in terms of their structure. In order for our students to compete, they had to be available to start the internship from early in June. So that's one stream. Very few students will do their internship at that stage. It really is only for those companies. I mean, Facebook is a great example. There's 2 or 3, I think, who have these structured internships that start from June. But in our experience this year, it's been really for a handful of students. The majority of internships happen over the summer, and so there's flexibility within that time frame as to the number of weeks that you're doing your internship. There's a minimum number of weeks, there's a minimum time commitment, which we can talk you through in more detail when you come to join us. But most students that are doing an internship will do it during that summer period, July to September, and that's when most employers are offering them. So if you are doing an internship for credit, and say, for example, you are doing one in the first stream, you have to come back and complete the rest of your credit requirements in the summer through electives. If you're doing one here in the summer term, you will already have completed your credits in Trinity term. So we work through that process with you. There's timing around that, making sure we know at what stage it is that you're taking your internship to make sure you can meet your credit requirements. Sorry, Sam, in that whole long, lengthy description, I've forgotten the other aspect of the question that I was supposed to be covering.
That's all right. Sorry, I shouldn't have combined 3 questions into one. Can they be international and paid?
Yes, they absolutely can. So every year there will be a small number of students that take international internships. We absolutely welcome that, encourage that. And yes, internships are typically paid, not always. I mean, obviously people who are looking for internships in, for example, the third sector or perhaps in government, quite often there will be unpaid internships, but many corporations will pay for interns, a nominal amount. It won't be the salary you hope to achieve when you've graduated, of course, but often there is a payment involved. So that is definitely a possibility. That is up to you and the employer and the internship that you have sourced.
And a few people have asked just how many people would go for the internship option versus maybe the electives and the SCP combination.
Yeah, so most people do electives. So I would say a heavy majority of the students will finish their course having completed it via electives. And then there's a large minority who will do an internship. So if you can think of it, probably, I mean, I don't know the exact numbers. I would say maybe 2/3 are electives, a third internship, maybe slightly fewer for internships. But it's a large minority that will do an internship, and then a small minority will do SCP. So SCP tends to be a much more specialized opportunity because it really depends on the companies and the projects that we source each year. For some of you, you'll just, one year we had a project for Chelsea Football Club, that really was of huge interest to a subset of students who maybe wouldn't have done an SCP if it had been a different company or a different type of challenge. So SCP tends to be much more niche. A much smaller number of students will do that. So that would be the sort of least popular of the options, in the sense that it's much more specialized.
Excellent, thank you. Quite a few people have asked if there's maybe a reading list they can get access to, or when they'll get access to things like their student ID and their email address. Did you want to maybe talk a little bit about kind of the onboarding from the programs team side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So that onboarding starts in July. So in terms of how the university works, they work on a process of sort of bulk upload, if you like. So although for some of you, and particularly I'm aware that there may be some people on this webinar who were admitted in stage one, yeah, that feels like a long time ago for all of us, and I'm sure it does for you. You'll have the longest time to wait until that process is launched. But the intent is that everybody, it becomes part of the program together, so that there's not sort of an individual kind of access going on throughout the year. So in July, you'll start receiving updates from the programs team, and there will be things that they need you to do in order to make sure that you're signed up for everything you need to be signed up for, and then there will also be resources that you can access as we go forwards. One of the things I'm looking at, and I don't suspect I will have it really together in time for you guys, is whether there's more we can be doing around preparation. So at the moment, we don't have any specific preparation companies that we advise, or any materials on the class content side that we would advise. I'd like to do more there, but I think given current circumstances, it's not going to be a priority for the next few months. So what I would say is, if there are areas of the curriculum which you feel anxious about, and there will be, everybody has strengths, everybody has things that they're a bit more worried about, take a look at what's out there to prepare yourself for it. Think about the GMAT score that you got, or the GRE score that you got. Were there aspects of that where you really struggled, or you felt like you were weaker? Start doing some reading around those subjects. You can find sort of the top business books that are available in those subject areas. Just start doing some reading, just start getting your mind together in terms of what you might be experiencing on your MBA, so you can begin to develop your confidence in time. The other thing I would suggest is really start thinking about your practical arrangements. So this is something that can be very stressful when the program starts, if you haven't got your accommodation, or if you haven't figured out your transportation, how you're getting from the part of Oxford you live in to the part of Oxford where you're going to be studying. These seem like small things, but when you've just transitioned your whole life into something completely new, that does take its toll. So again, too early to start doing that now, I would say, certainly in any practical way. But when you get into that summer period, start thinking about what that looks like, and try and arrive in Oxford, all being well, in time to practice some of those things and be settled before the program starts.
Wonderful, thank you. There's a couple more questions about, there's quite a few questions about the uncertainty and basically what will happen in September if things aren't improving. And unfortunately, we really know as much as you all do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely on our minds, of course, and I think everybody is worried about their own health, the health of their family, what will be happening in the country in which they live in July, August, September. And then on top of that, of course, we all have the shared and collective worry about the Oxford MBA and where we will be there with that program in September. The only thing I can do to reassure you is that, of course, part of my job as program director is to plan for all eventualities. So as much as I am spending, the majority of my focus taking care of my current students, which is the right thing to do at this time, I'm also planning for, the incoming cohort. And, if we get to the point where, we have to make decisions about what that looks like, of course, we will reach out to you all and discuss the options that may be available to you. But at the current time, and in fact, based on what we read in the news about the progress of the disease here in the UK, we are anticipating that we will be able to start the program as planned, on time, in person in September. And all we can do is just to keep communicating with you should anything change on that score.
And a couple of people, sorry, just going through all the questions here. Someone's asked if scholarship opportunities are open until the decision deadline.
Yeah, so scholarships are adjudicated every stage, but every candidate who's eligible for a scholarship will be considered at each of those meetings. So regardless of what stage you were admitted to the program, you will still be considered for scholarship in amongst all the other candidates at every stage. So if the question is there still an opportunity for me to receive a scholarship, then yes, there is still scholarship. There are still scholarship funds, which will be adjudicated at in stage 4. Of course, the further you go through the year, the less of those funds are still available to be awarded, but that is still a possibility. So if you are still looking for funding, then you may well be successful in the next stage. Of course, please do continue to source other avenues in order to make sure you can come and be with us next year.
And someone else has asked about the new 2-year visa and if that's already impacted employers showing greater willingness to hire international students. That's something, obviously, because it is new, we're not too sure about the outcomes just yet, but we would like to assume that just makes employers in the UK much more willing to hire international students, and also hopefully eases the stress of dealing with visas after the program has finished.
Yeah,
but we're
absolutely.
not too sure about that one yet.
I think the initial response from business was very positive. So I think the decision actually reflected not only the desire of universities and students to give this opportunity for people to stay in the UK longer, but actually also for businesses to address their skill needs. So I think the initial reaction was really positive. Of course, we haven't yet, as Sam says, really seen it come into force as yet. So we don't know exactly what that's going to look like in terms of hard data. But certainly I would say that the response from UK businesses I felt was very positive. We really were very excited to receive that news. So I think it should be a positive thing all round.
And another scholarship question, can current partial scholarship holders still be considered for more scholarships at SBS?
Yes, same answer to the previous question. Yeah, absolutely. So you still remain eligible and you still remain in the pool of individuals that we would consider.
Thank you. And someone's just asked, when will applications for the finance lab open?
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head when that will happen. We can certainly have a look and see if we can get back to you. The finance lab is run separate from the program, so it's a co-curricular activity, and they have an amazing director of the finance lab who sort of independently runs that. So I'm sure he will be putting out information on that soon. I imagine that along with everybody else, he's coping with the current situation. So I don't know when that will be, but we can certainly find out that information.
That question as well was asked a little bit on our careers webinar last week, and it probably won't be until June or July, so in the similar timeline as the programs team and their onboarding, as Liz mentioned earlier. Finance Lab is usually around the same time as well, so don't stress now if you're feeling like maybe you've missed the invite or you're really eager to get enrolled now. That's really awesome, but just might have to just wait until June or July when John Gilligan, the Finance Lab director, is essentially opening the program for applications.
Great, thank you, Sam.
And thank you, everyone. You're sending lovely long questions. It's just taking us a little bit of time to filter through them. I'm sorry for
we should
the
have some
delay.
holding music while we're working our way through.
So the questions about when invoice and deposit deadlines for stage 3 applicants is due. I'm not too sure of the dates off the top of my head. So what I would recommend doing is either sending us an email to the Oxford MBA email address, or for stage 3 applicants, your admits webinar is next Monday. So you should have, in your offer letter on last Friday, you should have received a link to the admits webinar as well. So you can hopefully get all your answers about deposit deadlines and things like that from the admits webinar with, I think, Charlotte Kelshiker, our senior admissions advisor, will be holding that one. So yeah, sorry, we don't know the dates off the top of our head. Someone has asked for the timings between the finance lab and the consulting development lab and the social impact lab. And is it possible, or realistic is probably the better word, I like that you gave us both options. Is it possible or realistic for students to be involved in all three?
Is it possible? Yes. Is it realistic? No. Is my honest answer to that. Now, of course, you may find different. In terms of the way in which those things are scheduled, we do try and avoid the clashes between the co-curricular activities. So the different labs are held on different nights, or if it's run by the Career Development Centre, it may be on a Friday during the day. So we do absolutely take that into account in our scheduling. And there are students that would do maybe 2 labs or 1 lab and 1 sort of career development program that's a bit more intensive. I think you'd find 3 a real stretch. If you can just think about what your day is going to be like, you're going to be in core classes, say on a Monday from 9 till 5. You'll have had that in 3-hour blocks. So you'll have had 3 hours in the morning, a break for lunch, and then 3 hours in the afternoon. And then if you're doing finance lab, you'll go straight into finance lab for the whole of the Monday evening. And then you'll get up on Tuesday and you'll do that whole thing again for the day. And then if you were doing impact lab, you'd go straight into impact lab for the whole of Tuesday evening. So you can see already that, if you do that, you're probably going to be absolutely exhausted by Wednesday. So that's going to be a really, really tough schedule you're going to set yourself. There's so much going on at Oxford. You will always find more than you can engage in, and you will always find somebody who's doing something they think is the best thing in the world at Oxford, and you can't do it because you've made another choice. It's really hard. It's sort of this sort of Oxford FOMO we talk about a lot, is there's just so much going on. So you will need to make choices. You may find that you try a lot in the first few weeks and then you refine down in terms of realizing what gives you the most value and what you can manage energy wise. But saying, for example, doing 3 labs or 2 labs and 1 considerable career development sort of program on the side, that would be quite an intensive schedule.
Someone else has just asked if we can work with the Skull Centre for Social Entrepreneurship during the program. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. The Skull Centre is very active, and in fact, they have a couple of different labs, and Impact Lab belongs to them. So the Skull Centre has a whole team of people, many of whom are committed to developing activities for students. So there's lots going on with the Skull Centre that you can get engaged with if that's an area you'd like to be part of. And similarly with the Entrepreneurship Centre, huge amount of activity going on there. And with the Foundry, there's also the Creative Destruction Lab that you can join as well. So lots of different centres at the school that are really heavily engaged with students.
And someone has asked, for the students that go the elective route in the last semester, how does that impact people's ability to make a career transition or pivot regarding full-term jobs after the program?
So I think, everybody goes on their own journey here. It depends very much on what it is that you hope to achieve and what your background is. If you are trying to change function, geography, and sector, you've got a much steeper hill to climb. So you need to think very carefully about how you use that sort of end of the program in terms of whether you try and source an internship or whether you think electives are the best route for you. And that's why our careers team are here. So those are conversations you have with your careers coach to think about how to achieve those career objectives most easily, most efficiently within the program. So I really would encourage you to have those conversations early on with your career coach. And the earlier you engage, the more the careers team love it, because that gives them so much more time to work with you, to help you make decisions, to help you make connections, and to interact with people that will support you through that career change. That said, as I say, the majority of our students will do electives, and you'll have seen from our employment report that our students place incredibly well at the end of the program. So that's not to suggest that by doing electives you in any way limit yourself. It really just depends on, the nature of the transition you're trying to achieve and what's the best means to do that.
And someone has asked which term MBATS is held in, and if you participate, how does it affect any of the course?
MBATs. We love MBATs. So sadly, MBATs are one of the casualties of the current situation because they're due to happen on May 8th this year. and in Paris, and unfortunately the situation in Paris does not allow for that to happen. So that's really sad for our cohort this year. So typically it's at that time of year, early May. It is the one and only event that we reschedule classes for. So I just want to make that really clear before everybody asks me to reschedule classes for all the other amazing things you want to do. It is the one and only event for which we reschedule classes. So we enable our students to participate in MBAT because it's such a, an important part of the cohort experience, and we're really sad that it's not happening this year. But yeah, it's May. We will reschedule classes for the day to enable you to go, and it happens over a long weekend, to go and represent the business school, and we always do very well. So yeah.
Yeah, we've won the first 3 years, or sorry, the last 3 years. So this year there was a lot of pressure on the current cohort. So if they can't compete, then it'll be up to you guys to continue the winning traditions next year.
The pressure transfers to your excellent. I can see something coming through here on, again, on the labs, whether they run throughout the full year, or for specific weeks and terms. They are limited, so that it varies depending on what lab you are part of, but they run at different times during the year. So typically very heavily front loaded into the program, and then they sort of finish, and that really accounts for the fact that students then start to do lots of different things around electives or internships, but they do run at different times during the year, and it is for specific weeks. So you need to look at the specifics of each opportunity that you want to take part in.
Someone else has asked, in addition to class time, what the rough expectations are for self-study and revision.
Yeah, it's really hard to it's hard to come to a number that makes sense, because what you'll find is that it's hugely variable depending on the areas of strength that you have. You'll find that certain terms or certain blocks are much tougher for you, that you need to put in more personal study hours. You'll also find, for example, that when you're in teamwork projects, you probably need to put in more hours, because there's a certain amount of work that has to go into just the group itself and engaging in a group scenario, which means it can be a little bit less efficient sometimes than your personal study. And it just also depends on things as simple as, how quick you read. I mean, that varies hugely from person to person. That said, having looked at, we do, obviously every university has sort of metrics that they use for notional learning hours. And I was quite scared to look at the notional learning hours for the MBA, because it's something like around 50 hours a week, which is class time and preparation, and revision, reading, everything that goes into your learning, not co-curriculars, not career development. So you can see, if you refer to my answer on the previous question about how likely it is that you could manage 3 labs, when you put it all together, it is an incredibly intense experience. Now, that said, there will be weeks where you do much less than that. Some of you will find that you don't need to work that much because perhaps of the background that you've got or the speed that you read. And we're also, we do a lot of work around study skills as well. So we have lots of aspects of this that we cover in workshops, and some one-to-one support you can get to help you, navigate this and be as efficient as possible in your study. But you should expect it to be full-time, more than full-time. It will feel more intense than the full-time job that most of you have.
And someone else has asked a question about taking an internship at a company that you co-founded. So for entrepreneurs that would like to dedicate more time to their business during the summer, would that be possible?
Yeah, we would need to look at that on a case-by-case basis. So an internship is something that you're employed to do. So it's slightly different to being a founder of a business. So it's a hard one for me to answer in a generic way, because it really depends on the nature of that business, who else is involved, who you'd be working for. That all of those kind of questions, if you're a co-founder, it's a little bit more complicated. So I would say that we're very much open to enabling students that have an entrepreneurial background to continue to do that as much as we can, but we would need to look at the specific circumstances and whether it can count for an internship for credit, or whether it's something that you would have to do electives, but you could continue that on the side without credit, or even, would it be something that you would put a team together for and work on an SCP? So there are different ways to look at it, and we'd need to take that on a case-by-case basis.
Excellent. So we've got a few more minutes left if anyone else has any final questions. I appreciate there's a few that we haven't been able to answer. So I have individually replied to a couple of people with the email address, but if there's something we really didn't get to today and you feel that maybe we didn't answer your question, please do just email us. Sometimes we might have to triple check with maybe our careers colleagues or our colleagues in the student funding team. But yeah, please don't hesitate to just reach out to us if there's something we haven't answered today. So someone has said, do you usually hear from Oxford scholarships after you submit your deposit? I'd like to plan for my financial loans but have no idea where to begin. That's a good
And
question.
yeah, it's purely a timing issue. So it really depends on when the scholarship committee is, as to when you hear. So as soon as we've had the we try and make the scholarship committee as soon after the admissions decisions are made for any particular stage as we can, and then we get those decisions out as quickly as possible. So we certainly don't connect scholarship decisions with whether or not you've paid your deposit. We don't look at that information, and we're really only looking at admitted students. So if you were awarded a scholarship at stage 3, you would know by now, because you would have known at about the same time that you got your admission offer. Of course, there's still an opportunity for you to be awarded a scholarship in stage 4. But if I were you, I'd be looking at how to plan the finances for the whole tuition fee at this point, so that you're able to still move forward if that doesn't happen for you. There are some specific scholarships which have different timelines. So if you've applied for something like the Pershing Square Scholarship or the Skoll Scholarship, these are different named scholarships that have different timelines, which are separately published. So that will be slightly outside of our usual processes.
And there's just a couple of questions left. One of them, I'm not too sure if this question's relating to staff or not. So someone has said a lot of firms this year have said to be freezing hiring for this in the coming year. What is the situation at Said?
Yeah, in terms of the hiring firms that we're working with. So, I think it's fair to say that every organization is currently in a state of flux. So, nobody is protected from the crisis in which we find ourselves, not us as an organization and not the organizations that hire our MBAs. What I will say is that no hiring events have been cancelled this year. All of our hiring companies have moved those events online and delivered them virtually. So nobody has said we're not hiring at all. We don't expect to hire MBAs. None of that has come through. Our hiring organizations have continued with their activities. They've just done them in a different way. And our career service has been fabulous at sort of very short notice, really preparing our students for those kind of events to be held virtually. So that activity is still continuing. I think, I don't know how you all feel, but I feel as though time has taken on a slightly different meaning since the coronavirus crisis hit us, and every day is slightly different, and every day the picture changes. I don't know what the hiring environment will be like for the class of 2020 when they graduate in September. I genuinely don't. I don't know what it will be like for sure in September 2021 when you will all graduate. All we can do is to continue to adapt our provision to make you as best suited for whatever that hiring environment is as we absolutely can, and whether that's different types of interviewing skills, or remote working skills, or global virtual teams, whatever that might look like, trying to continue to adapt, and make sure we give you the best chance that we can in what will probably be in some ways a challenging hiring environment, not least just because it's changing so quickly. But I've been really reassured by the approach of the hiring organisations and the fact that they still come to us. They still hold those events, if not physically on campus, in the same way that they have been doing previously.
And we've just had one last question come through about how early do you suggest finding an apartment? Liz, would you maybe mind just talking about the couple of accommodation options in Oxford, and then we might have to wrap things up.
Yeah, do you know what? Actually, I am not the best person to answer that question. That would be something that we'll have to get the administration team on board to answer, because there are options. So I can give you a very high level, but really in terms of details, it's about accessing those resources online through the website. So your college will be the first sort of point of call. There's your college and there's graduate accommodation office, both of which supply accommodation to our students. Beyond that, there is of course the private rented sector, but my understanding is that the college and the graduate accommodation office are really the primary sources of accommodation for students. And as for the timing, I don't know. So that will be something to please have a look at our website, follow the links, which will take you through to those various different places. And of course, wait for information from your college. So, as you'd expect, colleges are dealing right now with very urgent welfare queries for their current students. But once they move through this sort of crisis, they'll be able to communicate a lot more, I'm sure, as we will with incoming students, to talk about the options that are available to them. You're in that sort of awkward position where you really want to be able to move forward and to have more information, but it's a little bit too early in many cases. So it's sort of a question of just holding, making sure you check your emails, following the links on the website, and do come back to the Oxford MBA email address for more specific queries, and I'll find somebody that's more involved in that aspect of the program to answer them for you.
Thank you. No, it is a complicated answer because there are so many options. Depending on your college, you'll have different options if it's maybe graduate only or undergrad and graduate, and depending what accommodation they have on site, and also they might have accommodation in other parts of Oxford that are part of the college. You can also rent privately. There are a lot of options. So at this stage, if you want to do some research, there's a lot of information on your applicant portal. I think on the right-hand side, there's a link to, I think, a college guide or living in Oxford or accommodation information. I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called, but there's definitely a lot of information on the portal for you. And as you get your college place, then you can also look into the college options as well. But if you have any questions, just send us an email and we can help as well. Wonderful. Well, I think that might be it. Thank you, everyone. We've gone a couple of minutes over time. It's really lovely to see all your questions, and it's really lovely that you want to get, I guess, started with the MBA so early, and it's great to see all your enthusiasm. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. It's been great to have the opportunity to talk to you. And thanks for all your great questions. I really look forward to getting to know you better. And I certainly appreciate you spending the time with us this afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely rest of the day or evening wherever you are, and we hope to see you very soon in Oxford. Thank you, everyone.
And keep yourself and your family safe. Take care.